Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. For everyone, I'm Mai Sisla. I'm the Deputy Director of the Aspen Tech Policy Hub. For those of us who are new to us, the Hub is a West Coast policy incubator training a new generation of tech policy entrepreneurs. We take STEM experts, teach them the policy process through fellowship and executive education programs, and encourage them to develop outside the box solutions to public sector problems. I'm thrilled to welcome you all today to our demonstration day event for the fourth cohort of the Tech Executive Leadership Initiative, also known as TELI. The TELI program is a joint initiative of the Tech Talent Project and the Hub. It is a 10-week skills building initiative to prepare experienced tech leaders to engage effectively with public sector challenges. The program provides senior tech professionals with a unique leadership opportunity to build skills through real-world engagement with government and policy. The Tech Talent Project and the Hub came together this spring to run the fourth iteration of this initiative. Every week from January to mid-March, we met with our cohort of TELI leaders to teach them more about policy. This afternoon, we will be introducing a few of those leaders. They will be presenting results from the culminating project of the TELI program. For context, throughout the TELI program, we ask the leaders to participate in a variety of exercises, from writing policy memos to creating stakeholder maps, to finally working on a 6-week challenge project with a government client. Their culminating government client project asked them to take all of the lessons they learned from the program and devise a solution to a real tech policy problem that a government agency is facing. There are 2 sets of projects that we will be showcasing here today. The first set of projects will be focused on improving services for foster care youth that are aging out of the foster care system in Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma currently has difficulty keeping in contact with foster youth once they age out of the system at age 18, despite the fact that the state provides many resources for these young adults, including housing and employment support post-18. As you might imagine, youth who are disconnected from government services after they age out of the system are more likely to experience a whole host of negative outcomes. So our leaders were tasked with answering the question, how can Oklahoma's Department of Human Services best connect aging out foster care youth to existing government and community resources? The second set of projects today are focused on improving the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints. In recent years, the Transportation Security Administration, known to many of you as TSA, has instituted a number of programs to improve the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints. This includes TSA's famed PreCheck program, among others. Despite these efforts, some travelers continue to be dissatisfied by their experience. Some common complaints include that some agents are rude or disrespectful to disabled persons, and that baggage inspection is too slow. So these leaders were thus tasked with answering the question, how can the TSA improve the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints? The leaders were split into 4 teams for these 2 projects, and as such, we'll have 4 teams presenting their own unique solutions to these problems. So to be clear, these teams only had a few weeks to both understand their problem and propose a solution. As you'll see, they've come up with outstanding work in this limited time, which just goes to show the power that this type of creative thinking can have to improve policy and government services. To explain a little bit more about the event and some brief logistical announcements, I'm going to turn it over to Georgia Gleason from the Tech Talent Project. Over to you, Georgia.
Hi, everyone. Great to see so many of you here this afternoon. I'm Georgia Gleason, Partnerships Associate at the Tech Talent Project. For those of you who don't know, the Tech Talent Project is a nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to increasing the ability of the U.S. government to recruit modern technical leaders in order to achieve critical economic, policy, and human outcomes. We're building a bench of modern technical leaders, as well as folks in the local, state, and federal government levels to connect them with opportunities to serve. So before we introduce our TELI leaders, I wanted to state some brief logistical announcements. After all 4 of the presentations, we will introduce our fabulous keynote speaker, Sharika Ekpo, and formally, she is of Anaplan and formerly of Google and the US Digital Service. We also wanted to note that the teams are releasing their projects live, so please check out the links in the chat box so you can follow along in real time. Last, we'll save a few minutes for Q&A at the end of every project presentation. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box below, and we will have the team members either answer the questions live or via the chat box. So with that, I'm thrilled to introduce the 4 tele leaders on the first team this afternoon who worked on the Oklahoma Foster Care Project. The first team includes Diosaline Gonzalez, a consultant specializing in virtual and augmented reality, Mukunda Penugande, a technical director leading organizational change and empowering teams, Ava Pereira, a public sector leader focused on improving city programs, operations, services, and the lives of residents through data, and Mayan Roth, a software engineering leader advising growth stage healthcare startups. For this presentation, we'll have Mayan Roth and Ava Pereira presenting. Over to you, Mayan and Ava.
Thanks, Georgia. Let me share my screen. All right. Hello, everyone. We are Oklahoma Team 1, and today we're presenting our project on improving outcomes for Oklahoma aging foster youth. Oops, sorry. Our client was the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, and they asked us to investigate how they can best connect aging foster youth to existing government and community resources. Their goal was to improve outcomes for individuals who are leaving foster care as they turn 18 and become adults. Oklahoma DHS runs a program called the Oklahoma Successful Adulthood Program that helps connect aging out foster youth to government services. Unfortunately, each year, roughly 175 youth leaving foster care fail to connect to OCSA or to government services. And that's out of a total of 600 youth leaving services. So youth who age out without support services in place experience significantly worse outcomes. Our contacts at OKDHS told us that within 2 years, 60% of youth who age out of foster care without connecting to support services end up homeless or incarcerated. Through our research, we learned that there are lots of services available to aging out foster youth. However, they're not reaching the foster youth because their contact information is out of date. One of our contacts at OCSA told us the following story, that during the pandemic, they had some leftover COVID money, which they decided to mail out in the form of gift cards to foster youth. And hundreds of those gift cards came back because they had outdated mailing addresses. So it became clear to us that there's so much help out there, but foster youth unfortunately aren't able to access it.
So our proposal is to create a self-service portal that's accessible both over the web and on mobile devices that will allow foster youth to come in and directly provide and edit and keep up to date their contact information. And we further recommend that we incentivize youth to keep that contact information up to date. So why are we recommending a self-service portal? Well, Oklahoma DHS told us that they maintain a database called OK Kids, which is the canonical source of truth for information about each foster youth that's stored while they're in care. And they told us that each foster youth's caseworker is responsible for keeping their information up to date, which includes documenting contact information for each foster youth. But what we learned is that while the youth are in care, the primary contact information that's documented for them is the contact information for their placement family, not for the youth themselves. Now, the caseworkers can choose to document youth contact information like email addresses or phone numbers in OK Kids. There's a field available for it, but that field is only populated about 5% of the time. So it seems like most of the time people don't know it exists. And furthermore, the OK Kids database is actually not updated after the youth turn 18 unless the youth voluntarily choose to re-enter custody. So what we propose making is an app that looks something like this, which would allow caseworkers or other DHS employees to create an account for each youth, either when they are aging out of foster care or as they're approaching adulthood. And for security reasons, when they create that account, they'll provide the youth with a one-time code, either in person or over the phone, that will allow the youth to create the account themselves.
Now, I want to pause for a minute on this issue of security. It's really important to talk about because these foster youth are a particularly vulnerable population. It's really important that nothing that we build or propose on a technological perspective is going to harm those youth or expose their private information to people who shouldn't have access to it. So for that reason, in our memo, we make 3 security recommendations. The first is this use of a one-time code to authenticate the youth at the time that their account is created. And this is to prevent anyone from impersonating the youth and creating an account for them who shouldn't have access to it. The second is that we recommend that all data be stored encrypted, which is a security best practice. And finally, we recommend a schema for restricting or permitting access within the portal based on role within Oklahoma DHS. So this is how it works. Coming back to our proposal, the youth will receive a one-time code from their caseworker and use that code to complete their account creation. And then they'll get access to a very, very simple page, which allows them to just verify and update their email address, phone number, mailing address, social media, basically the ways in which someone might want to get in touch with them. And then when they click to update that information, they'll be notified that they'll be receiving a small incentive for keeping their information up to date. And this incentive is really important. I mean, the real reason that foster youth should want to keep their contact information up to date is, of course, so that Oklahoma DHS and OCSA can find them and provide them with the really valuable and important services. But you have to remember that these are teenagers at the end of the day. So we think some small, more immediate incentive is also necessary that will help build the habit for these youth to keep their contact information up to date. And we recommend working with local nonprofits or other community groups to solicit donations of small gifts that could be used as incentives. In order for this portal to be effective, it has to be promoted. Youth have to know about it. And based on our research, we believe that a social media campaign is the best way to reach youth and to educate them about the existence of this portal and to remind them to keep their information up to date. We're showing you an example here based on the very effective Check on Us campaign that was run by Think of Us, a foster youth nonprofit, just to give you a mental idea of where you can go. And we also recommend promoting the portal during Oklahoma DHS and OCSA in-person events and using those events as an opportunity to encourage the youth to create their accounts and keep their information up to date. And finally, of course, we have to talk about budget. What you've seen here and what we're recommending in our proposal is to build out a very, very bare bones, minimalistic proof of concept, just enough to test out the hypothesis that having this up-to-date contact information will really improve outcomes for foster youth. And since our application is so simple, we've estimated that the initial build out can be done for just $32,000 and will have a very low annual maintenance cost. You can find more details about the budget and the rest of our proposal in our memo. Thanks so much for letting us share our idea with you today. Back over to you, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Mayan and Ava, and the FIRST team for your work. Your work was about building an app that allows foster youth to update their contact information. And I especially appreciate how you took a larger problem and you boiled it down to a simpler solution, which is creating an easier way to update contact information. So thanks for presenting. And I do also want to remind everyone in the audience, if you have any questions for our leaders, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So if you look in the chat as well, you'll see a link to this FIRST team's product. Take a look at that. Let me see. I think I see a couple questions in the chat. So I will propose a question to Mayan and Ava from Jenny. So I think the idea of incentives is such a good one, but one that is really essential if you want this to work. Do you think that providing additional incentives may draw young people to other valuable resources like VITA centers that help with filing taxes?
So I would say absolutely anything that we can do to connect the youth to the resources that are available is really valuable. And the first step of being able to connect the youth is being able to find and reach them. So however we incentivize them and then are able to funnel them to keeping their contact information up to date, then Oklahoma DHS and others can connect the youth to resources like the VITA centers.
Ava, do you have anything to add?
No, I think the other question was about challenges faced by caseworkers in tracking and updating foster youth contact info. And I just briefly wanted to say to that, like Maya mentioned earlier, they only have the foster placement the parents' information in their database. So I think having that direct connection to foster youth is going to be a game changer in terms of staying in touch, making foster youth aware of all the resources that are available.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's take one more question. How does the program validate the identity of the individual? That should be quick.
Yeah, so the way that we wanted to address this, because I think it's critically important that we don't accidentally give access to the wrong person or to someone who's impersonating, is this idea of a one-time code that's given to the youth in person. The caseworkers have an established relationship with all of the foster youth who are in their casebook. And so when they create an account for the youth and they give them the code in order to activate the account, they're doing that to a person that they know. And so the validation is kind of a face-to-face, human relationship validation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Mayan and Ava. And thanks to the audience. Keep those questions coming, please. So next, I'm thrilled to introduce the 5 tele leaders on the second team for this afternoon. This team also worked on the Oklahoma Foster Care Project and includes Suhas Joshi, a technology leader with experience at a number of large software companies, Ivana Ang, an experienced product executive specializing in public interest tech, Kason Pimason, a product design executive empowering the public with elegant, easy-to-use technology, Jesse Taggart, a design strategist committed to cross-functional teamwork and human-centered inquiry, and Jane Yang, a Jane of all trades with data-savvy, conscientious leadership, clear-eyed compassion, and get-it-done resolve. So for this presentation, we'll have Ivana and Kason presenting. Over to you.
Thank you, Georgia. I'm gonna share my screen now. Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Ivana, and today Kason and I will be presenting on behalf of our team. We'll be demoing a web application that puts Oklahoma foster youth in charge of their transition into adulthood. Similar to the first team, Oklahoma's Department of Human Services engaged us to help them better support aging out foster youth in accessing government and community resources that already exist today to help them transition into adulthood and become more self-sufficient. For Oklahoma youths who age out of foster care, what we find is that in those initial years, after they exit the foster care system, they face many challenges in becoming more self-sufficient. This is just a snapshot from the most recent National Youth in Transition Database survey, where OKDHS surveyed youths age 17, 19, and 21 who exited foster care. And as you can see here, only 80% of respondents age 21 reported completing high school. Enrollment in continuing education goes down dramatically between age 17 and 21. And many respondents also reported experiencing homelessness. OKDHS today offers targeted resources and programs to help aging foster youth transition out of the system. They have a program called Oklahoma Successful Adulthood, which offers a wide range of services and programs for young adults, such as financial assistance with housing and support with employment, education, and even transportation. Caseworkers also work with foster youth in their caseload who are age 14 to 18 to develop a plan to prepare for adulthood outside the formal foster care system. And this plan typically includes things like what the youth's plans are for securing health insurance, housing, whether they plan to seek employment or continue education after they leave foster care. And what we found in our research and interviews with stakeholders is that there's an opportunity for the youth to drive that planning process more. Today, OKDHS caseworkers offer 2 planning tools to help foster youths prepare for adulthood. And both of these tools are currently 10 to 12 pages of paper forms like the one shown on the right here. And there are several barriers that prevent these plans from being effective tools. One, the process is led more so by the caseworker rather than the youth. Secondly, youth often have to depend on caseworkers to take action, especially for tasks that require documentation or essential documents, such as getting a state license. And thirdly, the planning is currently all paper-based, so it's not easy for the youth to track their progress and share their plan and engage the other supportive adults in their network, in their life, to help them make progress on their plan. So I'm going to pass it over now to Kason to talk about our solution to these barriers.
Thanks, Ivana. If you want to go to the next slide. Because of the challenges Ivana outlined, we recommend that OKDHS develop a mobile-friendly web app that transforms the 10 to 12 page paper forms into a youth-driven, inspiring, and interactive experience. This web app will speak to youth in their terms, which is why we named it Glow Up. Youth use Glow Up to describe a major successful personal transformation, and that's what we want the web app to enable for them. The Glow Up web app would address all 3 of the major challenges with the current 10 to 12 page paper planning forms. Most notably, it would put the youth in the driver's seat. Youth can create their own goals, then the app can actually break down those goals into more achievable steps and provide contextual resources and exercises to help them reach their own goals. Secondly, it would help youth follow up with their caseworker and supportive adults. The app can automate reminders when the youth is waiting for their caseworker or supportive adult to take action. Automating these reminders would reduce the mental load for both the youth and their supportive adults and keep them accountable. Third, youth make the decision of who to help them and track their progress. So again, they're in the driver's seat, and there are also some direct wins for OKDHS, including having an additional channel to direct connect with youth, and there would be an export function so that the youth developed plan can be loaded to OK Kids and shared with the cohorts. As a first step, OKDHS should develop a 12-month pilot program, co-designed with Aging Out Youth. The pilot would measure if the app helps aging out youth in getting services and transitioning to adulthood. If the pilot is successful, as measured through survey data and goal attainment data measured through the app, OKDHS should make the app available to all current and former foster aged youth, 14 years and older, and market to both the foster youth as well as the caseworkers and supportive adults. There are many challenges for aging out youth, but by putting the youth in the driver's seat and giving them interactive resources through a web app, OKDHS can enable them to take a more proactive role in defining their goals and working with a support team to achieve them. This in turn will result in more youth achieving their goals and glowing up into successful adults. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ivana and Kason and your team for the idea of creating this mobile app. I love the name Glow Up, and website to help youth directly manage their transition into adulthood. And I especially appreciate how you utilize user design thinking to develop this. So we have one question from the audience here. Will youth have access to Glow Up even after turning 18?
Absolutely. That's the great thing about digital. You know, it's an archive in the making, right? So, you know, these resources are not like limited resources. Once they build them, once they actually use them, they should have access to them. It is for them. Like, there's no reason why we should take away access after they turn 18.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks so much to you and to the team. And next, I'm thrilled to introduce the tele leaders on the third team for this afternoon. This team worked on the TSA project on how TSA and the Department of Homeland Security can improve the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints. This third team includes Megan Cochran, a product leader focused on solving complex user problems, Christian Crumlish, a product manager bringing service innovation to vital human needs, Anita Lynch, board member, advisor, and former chief data officer, Atirik Sharma, an information technology executive focused on leveraging technologies to enhance human experiences, and Ian Sharp, a business-driven product technologist focused on questioning the status quo. For this presentation, we will have Megan presenting. Over to you, Megan.
Thanks, Georgia. It's great to be here today. I'm Megan Cochran, and it's my pleasure to share with you the work that we did here. Our team investigated how the TSA could improve the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints. Now, for any of you who have traveled, especially in the last several years, you'll know that there are lots of ways that it can be very frustrating. So we tried to focus down on where we could find particular pain points where we can leverage existing systems and have a direct positive impact on the travelers. So our goal was to reduce the complaints from disabled travelers related to airport security. And we want to do this with a program that we're calling TSA Cares Access. Now, airport security is difficult for everyone, but for the disabled, it's especially so. And when we talk about disabled here, we're talking about it in a very broad way. So it's not always something that's visible or permanent. It can be a sprained wrist. It can be a hearing problem. It could be somebody who has diabetes or another condition that requires them to have access to medication on a flight. So it is a very broad group, and it includes 1 in 4 adults in America. So it's really a huge audience of people who are considered disabled, even if it's not something that you can recognize just when you see them or meet them. Now, usually those don't require any special accommodation, but it can be very helpful for travelers to have a positive experience going through security when they are prepared and know what's coming. Now, the TSA already has an amazing program called TSA Cares. TSA Cares provides already information and support to anyone who needs it for any reason. You don't have to be disabled, but you can use their systems. They provide 2 types of support. They can answer any questions about your particular situation and the day that you're going through security. And also, if you need it, they can provide a passenger support specialist who will actually go through security with you. And I have a niece who needs help, and they use this program. It was incredibly welcoming, wonderful way for her to begin to fly. She's severely autistic and needed some extra help. And so the program is amazing. We wanted to build on the success of that program, which very few people are using as a total of travelers. So TSA Cares is accessible today 2 ways, because travelers can call in or they can fill out a form on their website. What we wanted to do is increase awareness of this program and also make it more accessible, particularly for the disabled who really can benefit from having that information in advance and determining whether or not they need someone to help them go through security. So TSA Cares Access is our recommendation here. And in researching this proposal, we learned that not only are the disabled more likely to feel stressed about going through security, we also realized that even when they're going through the exact same process that everyone else is going through, it doesn't feel like that. And this isn't true just for the disabled, this is true for the general population. It feels personal. So even though everyone's going through the same process, it can really feel like you're being targeted or being disrespected. even when the TSO officers are just doing their jobs exactly the way they're expected to do it. A very minor example of this, my son, who's 11, was tagged for a random screening. And they said, it's random. There's nothing you did that made this happen. But he spent the next 15 minutes explaining to me why he was targeted by the TSA. It is a natural thing that happens, but we just want to make it a little bit easier for everyone by getting them more comfortable. So our TSA Cares Access program that we're proposing has two parts. Number one is a toolkit, and this is a toolkit that allows partners like advocacy groups to promote the existing TSA Cares program. The second part of the program is a secure data transfer protocol, and I'm going to talk about these a little bit more in a second. What that would allow is for airlines to actually submit the TSA Cares request on behalf of the traveler. This makes it easier, and we'll talk about how that works in a second. I just want to talk about the pilot a little bit. We would want to pilot this both to work out any kinks, but also because it would, we hope, increase awareness of and access of the program. And we want to make sure that we can measure what that access is and ensure that the TSA can handle that access. We expect that pilot program to cost a little bit less than 150 grand. And we think that once that pilot has been run, there would be very little incremental cost to roll it out much more broadly. So today, the use of the TSA Cares is relatively low, especially when you compare the total number of travelers and that 1 in 4 disabled number. So we believe we can increase awareness of and access to the program. And by doing this, we think people will be able to go through security, particularly people with a disability or who are temporarily disabled for whatever reason, and they'll be more prepared to go through security and therefore more likely to be satisfied and less likely to have a complaint about the process. We can't make it fun, but we can take out some of the stress. So the first part of our program is the creative toolkit. And what we're showing here are just some examples. These are pre-approved plug and play assets that any partner can use. So let's say that you're an advocacy program working with a disabled community, you'd be able to just grab these assets off of the TSA website and use them on your website or in your promotional materials, or even on a newsletter, anywhere that you want to get people aware of this program. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to get approval. You just grab the assets and use them exactly as they are. We also think that airlines are a particularly good partner for this because the only time you really need to know is when you're buying an airline ticket. And so if airlines can build this into their purchase and follow-up flows, then we can assure that people who need the help, any help, have awareness that that help is available to them. You can see more of these published materials in our sample toolkit, which is published along with the other materials from our team. The second part of the TSA Cares Access program that we're proposing is a secure data transfer protocol. We specifically suggest that this be implemented by the airlines. Now, some airlines already provide additional support to travelers who have questions or need help with security preparations. I bought a plane tickets just this year, and many of them asked me if I needed extra help. But when we talked to those airlines, they said they can do all kinds of things on their end to make sure that they're aware, but they have no direct way to pass that information off to TSA. So what's happening today is a traveler, our disabled traveler, and that's the orange row that you're looking at here, they research the flights, they purchase the tickets, they might even communicate with a support specialist at the airline. But if they need help going through security, the only thing that airline can do is give them a phone number or pass them to the web address. They can't actually do it for them. And depending on what the disability is, that puts a lot of that pressure back on the disabled traveler to figure out how to do it. With this, the airline can pass that through for the traveler, and that makes sure that the information is all accurate, and it puts less of the onus on the traveler themselves. The airlines are interested in doing this kind of work to support their travelers. That means that the traveler is then prepared. They can get any questions answered. What do I put in my carry-on? What do I put in my packed luggage? And if they need that passenger support specialist, they can request it early enough to make sure that they can get the help they need. So we believe that this, and of course, this would be a secure data transfer protocol. One way it would go into the existing program that TSA is already managing, no additional workflow for those agents.
Thank you,
So
Megan.
thank you so much. Back to you, George.
Thank you so much. So I do have one quick question from the audience, which we will take one and then we'll jump to the next team here. Megan, how do you see the creative toolkit being used by airlines and advocacy groups? I love that it's plug and play. Can you say any more about that?
Yes, so the toolkit would have pre-formatted files, so image files or text files, and an airline or any other partner could simply download those assets and then place them into their own materials. So we envision, let's say, an airline. If you've gone through an airline purchase flow, as you're going through it, they already have additional information in their purchase flows. So what they could do here is just grab the asset. Let's say it's an image. There's multiple different sizes available. They can just find the one that fits in that space and then put it in there. Or they can, and they're basically like ad size pieces of media that they can just place in there, or they can use the text and the images from it on their own system, but they don't have to do anything to it. They can just use them as they download them from the website.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And thanks to Megan and your whole team for this idea of promoting and utilizing TSA Cares for disabled passengers. I especially appreciate how the project was focused on updating and uplifting an existing TSA program rather than creating one from scratch. And thanks for sharing those personal stories. So next, I'm thrilled to introduce the tally leaders on the fourth and final team for this afternoon. This team again worked on the TSA project on TSA and the Department of Homeland Security, how they can improve the traveler experience at airport security checkpoints. This fourth team includes Joe Alterio, a design leader, problem solver, and human defender. Eric Block, an engineering leader focused on improving education and software delivery. Nanette Cutliff, an empathetic technology leader with a customer-centric design focus. Ray Hernandez, a product and people leader growing software-based businesses. And Badri Sridharan, an experienced engineering leader who works across engineering, marketing, and customer experience. For this presentation, we'll have Joe and Badri presenting. Over to you, Joe and Badri.
Thank you, Georgia. And let me begin my presentation. Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. My team and I have been spending the last several months talking to airports and TSA in understanding the complexity of our travel system. And we focus heavily on reducing travel friction, especially minimizing the window of discomfort in our really complex travel system. A specific problem we decided to focus on was to improve the traveler experience at TSA checkpoints for those travelers who need special accommodations to go through screening. Now, what are special accommodations, you might ask? Well, great question. Special accommodations actually are a vast variety of things. They start with very simple things like mobility assistance, speech and hearing assistance. They could be cultural or religious accommodations. They could be medical. For example, you may have metal in your body somewhere. Or they may have things like you may have non-standard carry-on equipment. These are but a subset of special accommodations, but I guess this gives you the overall view of what they are. Now, our proposed solution in this space is to implement a new solution that we call the Traveler Dedicated Routing System, which is an on-demand system at airports that allow passengers to self-select during check-in and request assistance. This also presents to passengers at an airport kiosk specific criteria so they can figure out if they qualify for a special accommodation, and then they can request it real time. And we aim to start with a pilot and then scale it based on what we learn from that. Now with that, I pass it on to Joe, and I will also move into slideshow mode, which I neglected to do.
Perfect.
Two for you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Badri. Yeah, so just for context, before I jump into this, we're just focusing on the on-premise check-in for now and saving online and mobile check-in for a potential later phase. But currently, if you are a traveler at a US airport, the current journey is as follows. So if you're a traveler, you arrive at the airport and you check in either by the counter or by kiosk. Then as a traveler, you receive your boarding pass, but at that time, you really don't have any opportunity to self-identify for any of those accommodation needs, as previously mentioned by Badri. Nor do you have the opportunity to flag the security checkpoint that's best acclimated to serve those needs. And finally, as a traveler, you're kind of asked to wayfind on your own to a security checkpoint, where that TSA agent that meets you would be unaware of your particular needs, potentially causing delay and disruption. So when considering the solution for this problem, our default is always to try and use existing systems rather than build a whole new one from scratch, because improving existing systems usually enhances the velocity and chances of adoption. We realize that the TSA already uses a system to flag travelers that need extra attention. The secondary security screening selection, the legendarily quadruple S, if you've ever been unfortunate enough to get that on your boarding pass, we use that as our framework. So we propose implementing a series of prompts in the check-in process, either on kiosk or at the counter with the agent, so that the TSA can determine early on in the traveler's journey who needs additional attention. This would be similar to the query you already have to answer about traveling with dangerous materials. Potential categories and examples of these codes can be seen at the bottom right of the screen. Now, with these improvements made, the updated TDRS system kind of looks like this. A traveler arrives at the airport and checks in, either by counter or by kiosk, and fills out those pre-screened questions to determine any accommodation needs, if any. Then the traveler receives a boarding pass, and based on those answers, a code is assigned to them and printed right on their boarding pass. And then with movable signage, the on-premises TSA team can determine what security checkpoints or lanes are designated for those travelers who request accommodations, potentially smoothing traffic flow and giving more dedicated attention to the travelers who request it. So as you can see, our proposed initial pilot is fairly limited in scope. A single airport, a single airline, where the MVP is adjusting the kiosk and ticketing experience to properly test the TDRS concept and demonstrate value, as you can see by the timeline there. The output would most likely be some kind of synthesis deck and a presentation outlining our findings and where improvements could be made to the idea. As you can see, the budget is fairly manageable, consisting mostly of a program manager to run the pilot and the subsequent costs around the TSA training and software updating. This is your lovely DHS Team 2 squad. We thank you very much for your time. We are happy to take some questions. If you're curious for more info, please download the memo from the chat. We appreciate your attention, and back over to you, Georgia.
Thank you so much. Thanks to Joe, Badri, and your team for this idea to create this separate routing system. I especially appreciate how your project integrated the airline ticketing and reservation system that exists with the TSA process so that passengers don't need to fill out separate forms. It's very user-centered. So thank you. And I'm just going to check the Q&A here. I think we have one question. So does this proposal take any steps to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of special accommodations travelers who self-identify?
That's a great question. This is a question that we have looped around before. I think one of the main aspects really is that it is self-identification. So if someone does not feel comfortable sharing that information, there is no requirement around it. It's really a judgment call for the customer, whether they want to share it and potentially have that information on your ticket versus keeping it to yourself and potentially just being part of everyone else.
Thank you, Joe. Badri, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Joe,
thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you both so much. And lastly, I'm thrilled to announce our keynote speaker for today, Sharika Ekpo. And Sharika is a Chief Human Resources Executive, Board Director, author, speaker, and member of the Forbes HR Council. She is a passionate leader with global human resource leadership experience and senior advisor to C-suite executives. She has a demonstrated ability to design and execute industry-leading people programs, talent management strategies, and workplace diversity initiatives. She's a skilled facilitator and trusted advisor who provides subject matter expertise using evidence-based best practices to drive results. Sharika spent 10 years of her career in the federal government, leading teams at the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the United States Digital Service. Sharika, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your thoughts on these projects, and more generally, the importance of bringing tech viewpoints into solving issues like those we've heard about today. So over to you.
Georgia, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I just start by saying how impressed I am at how each team leveraged technology to create a user-friendly product? I am blown away by what I've seen today, and I know that when these solutions are put into production, it will really, truly make a difference. Technology is an essential tool to make government services more accessible for all. So bringing technology expertise into policymaking is of paramount importance in today's fast-paced and interconnected world. Technology has become deeply integrated into almost every aspect of our lives, shaping our economies, society, and even functioning of governments. Policymakers must possess a solid understanding of technology to effectively address its impact and harness its potential for the benefits of society. I enjoyed hearing from Eva, Mayan, Ivana, and Kason about youth in foster care. And I'm going to switch over to some notes that I have here, because when I heard about the OK Self portal, I thought it was genius that this team would think about how to create some additional bandwidth for caseworkers by allowing the youth to update their own contact information. I mean, considering that the contact information that's in the system is normally that of their placement families, having the youth take initiative on their own using your self-service portal is amazing. And to the Glow Up team, I'm hearing from Ivana and Kason, the web app that you are using to help transition the youth into adulthood is life-changing. Right. And I definitely see the opportunity for youth to be more engaged in the planning process, let alone digitize the process. It's 2023. So nothing that we do, whether it be government services or otherwise, should be using paper just because, it's easily lost or it doesn't transfer or send as quickly from one stakeholder to the next. So great job to that team. In terms of the TSA projects, I mean, the process for screening passengers has always been long and difficult, particularly for persons with disabilities and other special needs. So it's really exciting to see the proposals that would make it easier. So hearing from Megan and her team on TSA Cares and creating some, greater awareness on the TSA Cares access is fantastic. And really putting the emphasis and the onus on the airline who already have all of this customer information and making it more readily available and making sure that these services are actually taken advantage of is amazing. And then finally to Joe and Baudry, I loved your TDRS. This self-selection, process is one that is really going to save people time. And that's really what you find with a number of technological products and services. If technology is leveraged right, it can not only save us a headache, create a better human-centered experience, but also save us lots of time. One other critical element of success that I would like to touch on today is technical talent. The teams that you heard from today are comprised of technical experts in their respective fields who know the work and who are willing to lend their services to make government services better for everyone. But finding the right technical talent is critical to making services better. And we know that technology professionals possess the skills and expertise needed to design, develop, and maintain digital solutions that increase accessibility, usability, and efficiency for our services. As you heard in my bio, I've done a number of things with the federal government, spent 10 years with the federal government, and then moved into the private industry where I've held, led HR as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. But one thing that I've made a part of my personal passion is to ensure that I spread the word to private sector professionals, respectively technology professionals, and ask them to consider government service. Because bringing their skills into the government ecosystem will definitely enhance it and will provide a greater opportunity for them to have a real impact and make a difference. So what I will leave you all with today is the charge to continue to look around at the different products and services that are offered today and use your skills and expertise to make them better. Don't be afraid to speak up. If you see something, say something. And if you say something, offer a practical solution that will help us all. Thank you all so much. And I am proud of the work that has been done today and open to any questions that you all may have.
Thank you so much, Sharika. Wow, you said a lot there, and I am also so impressed with what these leaders brought forth and the imagination and the technical expertise that was displayed in these projects. And I also appreciate your inspiring words. The importance of tech in improving public services, I've personally seen it. In joining Tech Talent Project, I've heard a lot about personal stories of impact, and I like what you said. If tech is leveraged right, and it can create a better human-centered experience, and it can save us time. I learned about the time tax concept in the last few years, and it's really fascinating. So yeah.
Well, I think the other thing, Georgia, when I think about this, UX design is something that I think has been overlooked for so long. But as we start talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what that looks like, it is a skill that will be sought after in years to come. In addition to, of course, cybersecurity and data protection, data management and analytics. But when I think about this, I think I really want for people to consider something new. Oftentimes when I'm coaching clients, people say, well, I've done this kind of work for the last 10 to 15 years, and I think I want to try something different. I will tell you, it's never too late to pivot. And the perfect place to pivot into is state, federal, or local government. We need your help.
Amazing. I love that call to action. And I know we have just a minute or two left here. Could you share from your time in government? I mean, you worked across a couple different agencies, you worked at USDS, top of your head, just a couple projects or human impacts that you made that you really excited you and kept you in public service?
Well, you know what? There were so many, but I think the one that I'll draw on really quickly is what drew me to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So the CFPB was started by the former President Obama and Senator Warren at the time to really protect the consumer from predatory lending practices that major banks were, that actually led to the economic downfall in the US, but also that really hit communities of color and older Americans really hard. And I took that personally because my parents are immigrants to this country from the West Indies. And I saw firsthand it take my mom until she was 40 years old to actually buy her first home. And that's because when she arrived in this country, she was encouraged to get multiple credit cards, despite having a low-paying blue-collar job. And so that type of predatory lending, without the ability to repay these high interest rates and fees, makes it such that people can't afford the lifestyle that they have, and or it stops them from actually achieving the American dream. And so anyway, I went to work for CFPB because I wanted to make a difference. And I wanted to be a part of that team that was going to, get economists or have write policies that will make companies like Bank of America and JP Morgan and all these, really, really large banks accountable for these, excessive overdraft fees or credit card fees that were there. And so while that's not a specific instance, I know firsthand that the people that I helped recruit as the director of talent acquisition at the time directly impacted the policies and laws that were created that help older Americans fight back and not get into reverse mortgages and things like that, companies were trying to prey on them for. So there are tons of stories that I could share, but I will tell you at every turn, specifically with these 4 projects that we heard of today, you not only see the impact, you feel the impact. And I know the youth and the disabled Americans that will benefit from these products will definitely feel the impact too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sharika. Again, just a little round of applause and a round of applause to every team. And I will pass it back to Mai.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharika, Georgia, and to all of the teams for their incredible work on these projects. As I mentioned before, the fact that they were able to produce these ideas and do this research during a part-time program in just a few weeks really gives us a glimpse into what's possible when you partner civil service leaders with modern technical experts to improve public policy. Before we close out the event, I wanted to take a moment to make a special announcement in honor of one of our former employees, Sevilla Pitt. For those of you who know the Hub well, Sevilla was the Hub's first employee. Though she only spent 10% of her time with the Hub, she reviewed and helped every single fellow for our initial cohorts and made our events run smoothly day in and day out. She's so much more than that. She was such an integral part of our team at Aspen Digital. She managed all of our cybersecurity events and programming and handled numerous staff transitions. It's really hard to come across how delightful of a person Sevilla was. For example, she would constantly check in on folks unprompted to make sure they were doing okay and ask them if they needed any help. She was just trying to do whatever she could for people, and she never wanted any credit for it, just to help. We also learned about how much she was passionate about being in Washington, D.C. She was a native of California, but really wanted to shift her career here. And it had been a dream of hers for many years to come to D.C. before taking this Aspen job. Sadly, 2 years ago, Sevilla started experiencing some health symptoms and passed away of pancreatic cancer in January 2021. She's left such a big hole on our team. In honor of Sevilla, the Hub and Aspen Digital have established the Sevilla Pitt Memorial Fellowship to honor her amazing legacy. So we award this fellowship to one member of every cohort who either has a passion for climate and the environment, which is something that Sevilla cared about deeply, or shared her interest in Washington, D.C. and exemplified her selflessness and generosity of spirit. So this person, we bring this person to Washington, D.C. To have them meet with government leaders, with Aspen staff and tech talent staff, and to gauge in their area of passion through meetings in D.C. So we are delighted to announce the Sevilla Pitt Memorial Fellow for this class today. We asked this cohort of fellows for their nominations, and one person stood out to both us and to the fellows themselves. So here's what some of the other folks had to say about her: that this person has been so amazing and such a leader, invaluable. She's been really helpful with reaching out to stakeholders. She continues to push us every day. She keeps the team moving forward and the project moving as scheduled, and she is such an engaged candidate. So I'm thrilled to announce the Sevilla Pitt Memorial Fellow for this cohort is Nanette Cutliff. I know many of you didn't get to hear her speak today, but I can sort of attest that all of the amazing things that our fellows said about her was true. So I wanted to specifically congratulate Nanette for being our Sevilla Pitt Fellow for this cohort. And before we close out for the afternoon, I also want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this event possible. This includes our incredible tele staff, Connie Moore, who has been on the back end running everything during this webinar, Kateri Gajadar Smith, who has helped push and polished these projects in the last few weeks. Emma Calkins, Cass Madison, Betsy Cooper, Andrew Lewis, Grace McKinney, and along with anyone who mentored and supported the teams as they conducted research on their projects. I'd also like to specifically thank our keynote speaker, Sharika Ekbo, and of course the tele leaders themselves for all of the work that they've done. So this culminates our demo day for this cohort. To learn more about these projects and these team proposals, we again encourage you to go to aspentechpolicyhub.org. Thank you again for joining us. For the stakeholders, just a reminder that we will be hopping into an additional meeting after this, so we will see you in just a couple of minutes. But until then, thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you all soon next time.